All right, get ready, because today we're diving into, well, I guess you could say the ultimate mystery, what happens after we die. We've got excerpts from this blog post, Craig Hamilton Parker's What to Do When You're Dead, and it's set up like a panel discussion.
And a wild panel it is. We're talking mediums, authors, even a quantum physicist, all chiming in on the big question of the afterlife.
It's like the A-team of afterlife experts, and one thing they seem to agree on is that death, well, it's not the sudden ending we often picture, more of a gentle shift, like waking up from a dream.
Yeah, a lot of folks describe it as a coming home kind of feeling, like a familiar, welcoming presence. And you get this, even talk about a floating sensation during this transition. Instead of fear, there's this sense of peace, even liberation.
Okay, I've got to admit that's both comforting and intriguing, but what comes next?
Well, before we get to harps and clouds, most of these experts point to a universal experience, the life review.
Oh boy, here comes the Judgment Day highlight reel.
Don't worry, it's not about some higher power judging you. Think of it more like watching that highlight reel with a bunch of wise, compassionate beings, and they kind of help you grasp how your actions affected others from angles you might not have considered before.
So less about punishment, more about understanding the ripple effects of our choices, right?
Yes, exactly. It's like the foundation for real spiritual growth. It's like the life review itself sets the stage for a more, purposeful experience in the afterlife.
So we're not just floating around in a blissful haze. There's actual purpose, structure to it all.
That's what these experts are saying, yeah. They describe a highly structured afterlife where souls move through different levels or realms, and where you land depends on your spiritual development.
Wait, levels? Is this like some cosmic ranking system where the more enlightened you are, the higher you climb?
It's not about hierarchy, really, but about aligning with a vibration that matches your spiritual growth. It's like this. As we learn and evolve spiritually, our energy, our essence, it transforms.
So the afterlife mirrors that inner transformation.
Precisely. It's about evolving in compassion, wisdom, self-awareness, becoming the best version of ourselves, you could say.
So less about climbing a ladder, more like leveling up your character in a video game.
I like that. Each level brings chances for learning, healing, even prepping for future incarnations. And the interesting bit is, it's not about being good or bad, but where you are on your own journey of self-discovery and growth.
And that leads us to karma.
Karma, that what goes around comes around thing.
People often see it that way, but these experts, they say it's more complex than that. It's not punishment, but understanding the natural outcomes of our actions and intentions, kind of like those levels we were talking about.
So less about cosmic payback, more about the energy we put out shaping our experiences.
Right on. Your actions, your intentions, they create energy that affects not just this life, but possibly future ones too. It's cause and effect, but on a soul level.
If our energy shapes things, are we just along for the ride, or do we have a say in this? Now, it gets really interesting, because we're not alone in this. The experts talk about these benevolent beings called spirit guides, always with us, offering guidance and support.
Spirit guides, like our own personal cheering squad from beyond.
That's the idea. They communicate subtly through intuition, dreams, those aha moments, even events that seem random but turn out to be incredibly meaningful.
So, like getting a gut feeling that's spot on or seeing a certain symbol over and over could be our guides trying to nudge us.
That's what these experts suggest. The tricky part is recognizing their messages amidst all the noise of daily life.
How do we tune in? Do we need to become meditation masters or something?
No need for a monastery retreat, but quieting the mind through things like meditation can definitely make you more receptive to those whispers of guidance.
So it's about making space for that guidance to reach us.
Exactly. And speaking of creating space, the experts really stress forgiveness, forgiving others, and ourselves.
Forgiveness, why is that so important, especially in the context of the afterlife?
Holding on to anger, resentment, guilt. It doesn't just affect this life, they say, but can create energetic blocks that follow us into the afterlife.
We die holding on to all that baggage, and it goes with us.
Think of it less as baggage, more like an energy that colors your experience. Forgiveness, they believe, for others and ourselves, it's vital for spiritual growth, for moving on. It's about releasing the hold that past hurts and mistakes have on us.
So less about condoning what someone did and more about letting go of the control those actions have over us.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming our energy, our inner peace, which is key for navigating the afterlife, according to them.
That's powerful. It makes me wonder what ultimately shapes our experience in the afterlife. Is it already decided, or do we have a say?
This is where it gets fascinating because this panel, they say the afterlife isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. It's deeply personal, reflecting your internal state, thoughts, beliefs, and level of awareness.
So our consciousness is like the architect of our afterlife experience.
Seems that way. What we think, believe, how we live now, it directly impacts what we experience after death. It's a concept with huge implications.
Incredible. We have more say than we might think, even when it comes to the afterlife. This is a lot to digest, and I'm already feeling the urge to meditate.
Me too. But we've only just scratched the surface of this panel discussion. We've established the afterlife isn't the end, but a continuation, shaped by our consciousness, karma, and our ability to forgive.
So how does this all play out? What are the stages of the afterlife like? Can we really talk to those who've passed? What about reincarnation?
All questions we'll explore as we dive deeper into this fascinating topic. Stick around.
Okay, so we're back. And I'm still wrapping my head around this idea that our consciousness shapes our afterlife experience. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's talk about the journey itself. You mentioned stages of the afterlife. What did these experts have to say about that?
Well, they generally agree that it's not a free-for-all on the other side. Michael Newton, for instance, he did a lot of work on what he called life between lives. He suggests there's a kind of orientation period after we die.
Like a cosmic layover before reaching our final destination.
Right, more like a chance for our souls to adjust to being free from the physical body and, the earthly realm.
So is this when we finally get those harps?
Not quite. This is where that life review we talked about seems to happen.
Oh, okay.
And according to Newton, it happens with the help of our spirit guides.
So it's not like we're just replaying our greatest hits and misses on a giant cosmic screen by ourselves. There's actual support.
Exactly. Less about judgment, more about understanding the impact of our choices, big or small, and those compassionate beings are there to guide us.
That's reassuring. But the life review isn't the end, is it?
Right. This is where those levels of spiritual development come in. Newton's research suggests that souls then move to a realm that, you could say, vibrates with their level of growth.
Hold on. So where we go isn't random. It's directly tied to our internal state, how far we've come on our spiritual path.
That's the idea these experts are presenting. And it actually echoes what many spiritual traditions have been saying for ages. Yogananda Paramahansa, for example, he emphasized that our souls are on this constant journey toward, a deeper connection with the divine, with our true nature.
So even in the afterlife, there's still this evolution, this striving for something greater.
Exactly. It's not about reaching some static finish line, but about constant growth and expansion. The afterlife becomes this space for the soul to really explore its purpose, guided by what he called divine forces, letting go of ego and connecting with something much more profound.
I like that. But if the afterlife is this reflection of our consciousness, what about the connections we have with loved ones who've already passed on? Can we actually communicate?
That's where things get really interesting. This blog post digs into this idea of communication between the living and the dead, with mediums like Craig Hamilton Parker and Alison DuBois offering their perspectives.
So we're not talking about seances and Ouija boards here.
Not necessarily. These mediums, they suggest that spirits often try to reach out more subtly, offering comfort, guidance, even warnings. It's about recognizing those signs.
Warnings, like, hey, watch out for that banana peel on the spiritual plane. That's both comforting and a little spooky.
Right. But those in the spirit world, according to these mediums, they communicate in ways that are often symbolic, open to interpretation, dreams, recurring signs, those moments of synchronicity that seem too weird to just be coincidence.
Like when you're thinking about someone you lost and their favorite song randomly comes on the radio, hard to chalk that up to chance.
Exactly. It's about
less of a literal chat, more like being open to those messages, whatever form they take.
Yes. And mediums like James Van Praagh and Suzanne Giesemann, they believe we can be more open to these communications by quieting our minds.
So turn down the volume on our own thoughts to make room for those subtler messages.
Precisely. Things like meditation, being in nature, or just finding moments of stillness can make a world of difference. It's about being more tuned in to the whispers of the universe.
Like trying to have a conversation in a crowded room versus a quiet library.
Right.
You're bound to hear better in the quieter space.
Great analogy. And often, the most profound messages come when we least expect them, in those quiet moments when our minds are truly receptive.
Fascinating stuff. I do want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, though, reincarnation.
Yeah.
There are several experts on the topic in this blog post. What's the general consensus?
They seem to agree that reincarnation isn't so much about a straight line from one life to the next, but more like a soul's journey of growth and learning over multiple lifetimes.
So less like climbing a ladder, more like navigating a maze. We might revisit similar themes, similar challenges, until we learn a specific lesson.
Exactly. Craig Hamilton Parker, for example, he believes we choose our lives based on the lessons we need to learn and the karma we carry.
Wait, we get to choose? That's both empowering and kind of terrifying. What if we choose wrong?
It's not about right or wrong choices, but about aligning with the experiences that will help our soul grow the most. Think about it. Have you ever felt drawn to a certain career path, a place, or even a period in history?
Now that you mention it, I've always been fascinated by ancient Egypt. Maybe there's a past life connection there.
Could be. And Ian Stevenson, a researcher who dedicated his career to studying reincarnation, he found evidence suggesting that past life memories, particularly in children, often revolve around unresolved emotional or karmic patterns.
So if we don't get a certain lesson the first time, we might keep facing similar situations in future lives until we finally understand.
Think of it like school. Fail a class, you might have to retake it until you master the material.
Here's hoping there are fewer pop quizzes in the reincarnation version. So where does karma fit into all of this? We touched on it before, but I'm curious to go deeper.
In the context of reincarnation, karma isn't about punishment, but about understanding that our actions, our intentions, create energy that influences not only this life, but future ones as well.
So the energy we send out, good or bad, has a ripple effect that goes way beyond our current understanding.
Exactly. The Nhat Hanga, the Zen Buddhist monk, had a great way of describing it. He said our actions are like seeds we plant. If we plant anger, we'll reap suffering. But plant love and compassion, and our garden will be full of joy and peace.
Beautiful analogy. Makes karma less intimidating. It means we have the power to create positive change in this life and the next.
Exactly. It shows how interconnected everything is. Our actions have this ripple effect, influencing others and even our future selves in ways we might not grasp right now.
This is all mind-blowing. We've covered so much. Stages of the afterlife, communication with those who've passed, reincarnation, karma. But there's one piece we haven't fully explored yet.
And what's that?
Forgiveness. We've mentioned it, but I want to dive deeper into its significance, not just in this life, but in light of everything we've been discussing about the afterlife.
You're right, we haven't unpacked that fully. It's a topic that seems to weave its way through all these other concepts, the life review, spiritual progression, even communicating with the other side.
So where do we begin? So, forgiveness. Big topic even without bringing the afterlife into it. Why do these experts see it as so crucial for our spiritual journey?
Seems like they all agree that holding on to anger, resentment, all that heavy stuff, well, it creates a blockage. Imagine trying to run a marathon with a backpack full of rocks.
Yeah, I can see how that would slow you down, but are they saying we're stuck carrying that backpack around in the afterlife too?
That's the general idea. Unresolved emotional baggage, it doesn't just disappear when we do, it affects things on the other side, just like it does here.
So not about divine punishment for not forgiving, but more that those negative emotions become obstacles on our own path to growth.
Exactly. Remember Craig Hamilton Parker's description of the life review? Imagine going through that, seeing how your actions rippled out, but you're still holding on to anger, resentment. Not exactly the ideal setting for learning and growing.
Powerful imagery. It makes forgiveness seem less about letting others off the hook and more about freeing ourselves from the burden of those emotions.
Right. And when we release that burden, we open ourselves up, vibrate at a higher frequency, as Edgar Cayce would say. We align with love, with compassion, and that shift allows for a much richer experience, both now and later.
It's like those negative emotions are blocking the signal, making it harder to connect with that higher frequency. No wonder our spirit guides have trouble getting through.
Exactly. They're always trying to steer us toward love, toward healing, but we've got to be willing to let go of the defenses, let go of the pain.
So forgiveness isn't about condoning someone's actions, but choosing to release the hold those actions have on us. It's about reclaiming our energy, our inner peace.
You got it. And remember that forgiveness has to go inward too. Louise Hay, she really believed that forgiving ourselves is just as important as forgiving others.
It's easy to get stuck in self-criticism, regret, looking back on our lives. How do we even start forgiving ourselves for past mistakes or things we see as shortcomings?
Begin by recognizing that everyone makes mistakes. We're all a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
You were doing the best you could with what you knew at that time.
It's like we're judging our past selves based on the wisdom we've gained since then, which isn't exactly fair.
Exactly. That's where self-compassion comes in. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd give a loved one who's going through a tough time.
A complete shift in perspective. To go from judgment to compassion for ourselves and others feels like that's a vital part of this whole journey.
Absolutely. It brings us back to a core theme that seems to run through everything we've discussed about the afterlife. The power of consciousness.
We're not just following a rule book, trying to earn a spot in some predetermined heaven.
Not according to these experts. They suggest that the afterlife, the entire experience, reflects our internal state, the energy we cultivate through our thoughts, beliefs, and actions.
So our consciousness is the architect drawing up the blueprints for our experience in this life and the next. Empowering, but also a bit daunting.
It is a lot of responsibility,
Yeah.
but it puts us in the driver's seat. By choosing to live with more love, compassion, and forgiveness, we're shaping not just a better afterlife, but a more meaningful present.
It's like we're packing for a trip, and what we choose to bring will determine the quality of our experience. Anger, resentment, guilt, that's the heavy baggage. Love, forgiveness, inner peace, those are the essentials.
Beautifully put, it highlights the power we have in each moment to choose what we create both now and in the hereafter.
This has been an incredible conversation. Preparing for the afterlife isn't some separate to-do list. It's about living this life fully, consciously, with an open heart.
And that message goes beyond any one spiritual path. It's about recognizing we're not just physical beings having a temporary experience. We're spiritual beings on this eternal journey of growth.
And that journey continues in ways we're only starting to understand long after our time in these physical bodies ends.
Maybe, just maybe, by exploring these ideas now, really considering them, we're not just preparing for what comes after, but enriching the lives we're living right now.
A powerful thought to end on. By embracing love, forgiveness, and conscious living, we're not only shaping a better afterlife, but creating a more beautiful and meaningful present. Something to think about for sure.
Absolutely. Maybe that's the biggest takeaway from our deep dive today. It's not just about what happens when we die, but how we choose to live right now.